I'm Rachel Horgan. Join me each episode as I sit down with a guest co-host covering the latest business stories in the Seattle area. We'll read the news so you don't have to. This is The Weekly. Okay, hey everybody. This is going to be my last episode before I'm traveling. I'm going to Boston for a client, and I fly straight from Boston to Rome. I've talked about that trip a little bit on the show. So it's going to be 2 weeks that I won't be doing the show, but if you guys remember Nick Patry, my audio engineer, and he has been a guest a couple times, he's going to do a takeover. So I let him have full creative control. He knows the show so well, in and out. So I'm excited to see how he takes it. I think he might have some guests on, and he'll do a great job. So that's that. I'm going to introduce my guest today. We have Rich Hart. He's the co-owner of Harts Plumbing, Electricians, and HVAC Technicians. And alongside Rich, we have Jess Passmore. She is the COO of that same company. Hi, you guys.
How's it going?
Doing pretty well. And you guys are based out of Tacoma. I was going to try and come down there in person, but because of my travels, we're going to do this virtually. But you're in Tacoma, right?
Yeah, we're in Tacoma here at our main location, and then we've got another location up north that is a bit smaller than here.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, yeah, I think your PR person had reached out to me and was kind of saying, hey, have you thought about doing something more in the trades industry? And I was like, honestly, no, that has not come across my desk. So I think it's a big industry and something we'll be excited to talk about. But before we get into that, I'm curious how you both kind of got into this line of work. Was it something you always knew you wanted to do in the family? How did that come about?
Sure. Well, for myself, it started with having kids and a family, and I'm a tinkerer, right? So I'm more of a hands-on learner than I am a school book learner. And so I got into plumbing, looking for a life to support my family, and fell in love with it and moved from Maui about 13 years ago, opened up Harts, and went from pretty much nothing, knocking on doors, to 150-ish employees that have created a lot of good opportunities for others, and along with Jess helping run this big old beast of a place. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. What about you, Jess?
Yeah. I wish I've said this before. I wish I could say that I was always passionate about the trades, but I honestly didn't know anything about the trades at all until 7 years ago when I joined Harts. Moved out to the Pacific Northwest to be closer to family. Was working in healthcare for about 8 years. It was right in the middle of COVID, and I wanted to do something a little bit different, and got hooked up with Rich and his partner, Dan. They said, come on, I think you'll like it. It turns out I love it. So
They were right.
The rest is history.
Yeah, I love that. And give us, I know you said 150 employees, but give the audience a sense of the size and scope of Harts. I looked and your service area is huge. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it is. We've got big aspirations to have multiple locations just here in the Pacific Northwest. So we started out here out of a garage, actually, in Gig Harbor. And my business partner was living on my couch for a while with no wife and kids at the time, looking for a wife, and ended up finding one. But in the meantime, we rented him a house with a small shop behind it. And that's kind of how we kicked it off. We got our first 2 employees in that location, got up to 6 or 8 people total in the company before we got our first actual commercial building. Yeah, it grew a lot. And then 5 years ago, we dropped the location in Linwood just because the drive time is so ridiculous with all the traffic. It's not efficient or profitable by any means, and people hate it, which means it's hard to retain employees, right?
Right.
And so that's gone well. We really opened up our service area with aspirations of dropping new locations in Olympia, Renton, further north to Linwood, as far north as we can get to get up to the Canadian border, basically. But it's about finding happiness for our customers, which are our employees, right? When they get stuck behind a windshield all day, they start looking for better opportunities. And retention's a big thing in a business like this, keeping people happy, making sure they're able to support their families. They're constantly growing. One of our core values is grow or die. So if they don't feel like they're growing, they're probably going to go find somewhere where they do, right?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah. So today's episode, we're going to talk about kind of 3 categories here. The first one is just a little bit of an inside look at the trade industry. We'll dive a little deeper into some of the stuff we already started talking about. And there's an old article I'll link from about 3 years ago. I still think it was interesting. So I'll put that there. And then we'll talk about Microsoft's voluntary retirement. And lastly, we'll close out on a story about World Cup not bringing quite as many hotel rooms as we thought. So we're going to get into it. The first one, like I said, it's an older article, and I found it very interesting, but I want to kind of hear about big picture, the trades industry. The article said, and this again was 3 years ago, it said about 500,000 plumbers, for example, and nearly a third of them were over 50. So is that still happening today? Is that still something you guys are combating?
Yeah, so I would say I don't have any official stats on that, but when I started here 7 years ago, it was definitely something we were concerned about. It was really difficult to find tradesmen who were licensed, at least in the Washington area, and it was really a big constraint to our growth. And there was a lot of talk about, most of the technicians are older, phasing out, but we really haven't seen that kind of fear come to fruition, at least not in our business. I think there are more technicians about in Washington than there ever have been, at least in the last 7 years that I've been here. I think one of the big hurdles is, and it's different in every state, but in Washington, it can be difficult from the administrative side for these young gentlemen to get their licenses. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of different things that need to happen. And so I imagine there's quite a few technicians out there who are just not on the books as fully licensed and are working their way there. And we try really hard to help them with some of that, red tape so that they can get booked in. But it might still be true that technicians are aging out, but I don't think we've really seen it here.
I think it's still somewhat true across the country. I think for our mindsets, at least here at Harts, like 3.5, 4 years ago, we opened our own academy and we started taking kids out of high school and or we're going to college and it didn't work out for them. And we started bringing them in-house. We built a platform in our shop, started training them here before they ever saw a job site, did that for 3 to 6 months per class, and then got them out as apprentices with actual journeyman plumbers, which helped out a ton. Electrical, when we started it, we had a harder time finding people, mostly because of our name, and people just didn't.
Because it was Harts Plumbing.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't know you and they don't hear about you through the industry, they're a little skeptical to come even talk to you, right? And so as we've gotten bigger and our name has stayed good throughout the history of our business, we've become more known as a prime place to work.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about your apprenticeship program because I think that's so cool. And I don't think not all plumbers and electricians run something like that. I'm sure it's a big lift. Right. It probably costs a lot of money. And there's no guarantee that they work for you afterwards, right? So do you feel like that's paid off, though? That risk was worth it?
I think it was worth it. I mean, it was tough. Well, I'm not going to lie. It did cost a lot. And I don't know that it fully brought back what we put into it. But some of our best employees today are those guys, right? And they didn't all work out. Some of them we knew weren't gonna, but at the end of the day, we have a judicial responsibility to our industry to make sure that we don't end up in that situation that everybody was talking about 3 years ago. We're part of a best practice group nationwide, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. It's called Nexstar, that brings business owners together and businesses together to share best practices of how to show up for our customers, right? And provide the best 5-star service possible. And that was something that we learned through there. And there's only 2 or 3 of us here in Washington that are part of that best practice group. And so that was a pretty huge idea. And I know we've tried to help others try and get it off the ground. And it's been tough for them.
Do you think there's not enough federal or city training? Because I'm not familiar. Are there not enough options for people to get trained? So now it's kind of landing on the business owners to train?
Yeah, I think it goes back to how did you end up being a plumber, right? It's I didn't really want to go to college. It wasn't my thing. Granted, I've taken a lot of classes to learn things. However, it wasn't a 4-year stint. And your only options you really got are the union, which is purely new construction, which doesn't teach you service. So if your goal is to be a serviceman, it isn't that path, right? And then there's trade schools that you can go to, but it doesn't give you any hands-on experience. It's just straight code and, law.
Yeah. That's interesting. So speaking of kind of people coming in and working in your industry, Jessica, I saw this stat that women make up between 1% and 3% of plumbing, HVAC, electrical, that kind of world. How do you address this at Harts? And also kind of what's your personal experience been like being a woman in this industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when I came in, I was the only female leader in the group, and now I think us women outnumber the men in the industry. So that's been fun. But, when we were running the plumbing academy, obviously we're taking, the people who showed the best promise and the best fits, but we were trying to make sure we were including at least one or two females in that academy every time to just try to get people into the trades. And then recently I've done a couple of podcasts. I brought on, we have a master electrician who is really awesome, and she's a female, brought her onto a couple of podcasts so we can talk about it. And really, I think we're just trying to raise a little bit of awareness that, the trades aren't any one thing, right? And I would say this to men or women, like, if you're really good with people, we've got a job for you. If you are good with your hands, but not so good with people, there's a job for you. If you're good at both things, there's a job for you. If you are afraid of spiders, we still have a job for you. There's so many different kinds of plumbers, electricians, HVAC technicians. I think people have this kind of one view of what it is. And I think there's so much opportunity for women to get in the trades. It's just not something that we're really, told is a good option for us, right? And I think there's just not a lot of awareness of what the options are out there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of cultural things kind of working against it. And I think there's also not only diversity, but inclusion. So like once a woman does start working there, how do they feel? How are they treated? And are we keeping them and all of that? So it sounds like you're doing some good work there.
Yeah. And one thing I just really quickly say is, like, I would have expected more differences in the way that women are treated when they come into the trades. And I don't know how it is in new construction because we don't do new construction, but at least in the residential setting, like, they fit in seamlessly. Everybody, works together really well. And there isn't really a big barrier once you're inside. And I was talking with Joanne, our tech. She was on a podcast and she was like, yeah, it's great. Like, I feel like we're just all, doing the same job and doing the same thing. So I think there's more of a perception of barrier inside the system than there is actual reality when you get in with these guys.
Yeah, I think that's good to know. I wonder if more women would request a woman technician and maybe they feel more safe with a woman in their house or something like that. I don't know if you guys are seeing any of that demand.
We'd actually, I think we should see it more than we do, but inside of our best practice group, it's talked about regularly. Yeah.
There's definitely a place where if you do have female technicians, people will wait for that, especially if you are a single woman or, alone with children. I mean, some people just feel more safe with women technicians. Not that necessarily should be the case, but I think it is. And I think there's a big need there that there's not a lot of people to fulfill.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I want to talk about Harts specifically. You've gone through a lot of growth since 2019. I saw you were winning all these awards, fastest growing list, things like that. Mm-hmm. How do you think about that operationally in terms of scaling? Like, how does that look, for example, like your customer service? Are you having to go automated? Do you have to have more plumbers in different locations? Like, how do you grow that fast and what do you do to accommodate that?
Sure. I mean, I'll speak to the first half of our lifespan as Harts, but it's scary to take on things, right? Especially when you start from a garage, knocking on people's doors, introducing yourself to, oh my God, I have a whole nother family to feed, not just my own. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden there's 10 families to feed and 20 families to feed. It's a gamble, but it starts with setting the way you show up and the expectations of who we are as a business, right? Like, I require our people to be happy and positive inside here. Like, there's no negativity. If there is, we should go talk about it immediately because it's not who we are and it's not how we show up to our customers' homes. And we've got to make sure that we're happy doing what we do so we can go out and serve at a world-class 5-star level. Because if we don't, we're just going to be like everybody else, right? And that alone has been huge to our growth, right? Starts with our name with our customers. It ends with our name with our employees and the other potential employees that are out there. And it's got to be a fun place where people can thrive, grow, and do great things. We always like to joke, we're like the modern day superheroes. We don't have capes, but like we'll call versus new construction where you show up, you build something, you go home by 3:00, and it just kind of is the grind, I guess you would say. Like every day we're going into people's homes that are dealing with some of the worst nightmares they've ever dealt with in their entire lives. Floods, no hot water, like electrical ain't working, they're hot, they're cold, like all these different things. And we get to be the people that go in there and save the day. you
That's
know?
so true. It's got to be really rewarding. And it sounds like you're really thinking about, we're hearing a lot of CEOs and the big picture thinking about like how to make the most profit and shareholder value. And it's refreshing to hear, your focus is the customer experience and your employees' experience. And that sounds like it's at the forefront. Jess, what about you in terms of like operating that scale from 2019 to now?
Yeah. So, I mean, I am definitely the operating person, though I would say Rich is correct. You start with a foundation and then you just have to be willing to change and take risks and keep going. I mean, you add more software, started with, our, service system, Service Titan, so that the guys can do everything in one spot off of iPads. And then you add in other software and other things. You change from having a part-time bookkeeper off site to having a full one in site. You change softwares. But at the end of the day, like, it's just about being willing to change and to learn from other people and to keep going. Like, I mean, we don't sit down and say, oh, we're at 100 people now, so operationally we need to plan. We just run. And we kind of pick it up on the back end and make sure that everything works. And I mean, I think the biggest difference is you just got to have more guardrails in place, because now instead of 5 people that you can pull in a room and say, hey, stop doing that, do this other thing, you've got 150 people that have to keep the same experience for everybody. So you just have to have more consistency and more documentation. But
And consistency is the key thing. Like, we show up to a house today the same way we did 13 years ago. Like, I always joked around and said, hey, I brought some Aloha spirit to Washington, right? But at the end of the day, go make friends with your customers, do the right thing, show up when you said you were gonna. If you mess it up, make it right. Just do the right thing. At the end, that's how you succeed. I mean, it's pretty simple, really. It's just...
It is simple, and so many people miss it. I would tell you, other businesses do.
Yeah.
So,
Can't
Rich,
be all about money.
It's true. It's true. Rich, part of your growth included opening up HVAC services. So that looks like it didn't start until 2024. What were kind of the pros and cons when you were weighing whether to get into that or not, and kind of how has that been?
Yeah, it has not been easy, just to be very honest about it. At the end of the day, we want to be able to show up for our customers. We want customers for a lifetime at Harts, right? Our brand promises we care more. Well, if we can service all of your trade needs, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, sewer, maybe even restoration one day to do catastrophe, which we don't do now, we want to be those guys. Like, if you love us, why should you ever have to call anybody else? And like I say, we don't focus on money, but we have to make money to be a business. And how do you do that if you're not focused on it? You do it by offering more services.
Was it an additional cost to get that up off the ground? Because I imagine a lot of it's labor and maybe some parts, or like, was that the reason why it wasn't there in the first place?
No, the material cost isn't bad. It's really the processes, right? Like, it's a totally different piece of equipment and structure than plumbing or electrical. Plumbing and electrical are very close. HVAC's like, it's a whole different thing. It runs more like a car dealership almost, right? Like, you've got a service guy that knows how to fix them, but he doesn't know how to install them. You've got a maintenance guy that doesn't know how to install them or fix them. He just knows how to keep them clean and keep them running. And then your installer puts stuff in and it doesn't work, and he goes, I don't know. So that was kind of frustrating for us, right? And we've gotten there now, but we definitely beat our head a little bit getting there.
I would say, there is, whenever you started a new trade, there is front loading costs, right? So I got to get a manager in. I've got to, hire some people that I've got to pay whether we're busy because I'm getting calls or not, and all of that. So there's definitely some front loading costs. But the biggest thing is the expertise, right? So we come into your home and you trust us with your most valuable asset. And I got to make sure that my guys aren't flooding your house or lighting it on fire or any of that. So Rich is a plumber by trade. So plumbing and sewer, no matter what happens, he knows how to navigate around that. We had some really great electrical guys that came in, and we all learned that too. And this was the last thing. I think some people try to pile it all on, but we needed to learn one trade at a time, so that we made sure that when we show up in your house and a guy calls me and says, oh, this happened, I know how to respond to that. And so it's a learning curve for sure. And we've got to be the experts, and we've got to take care of people's homes. So got to get it all one step at a time.
Definitely. Yeah. And not being too much of a generalist, but having experts in each of those areas. Yeah.
We constantly talk about the 3 wins around here. It's the customer first, it's the employee second, it's the company last. We eat it a lot as a company, but at the same time, we drive growth and we drive
Yeah.
profit, right? We can't be a nonprofit because that doesn't work.
Hmm.
However, we've got to make sure that the value is there,
Yeah.
at the dollars we charge, right?
Yeah. Well, speaking of money, I wanted to ask one more question before we move on, which is, how have the tariffs impacted you? I know, like we just talked about, a lot of it's labor, but I'm sure you have parts that you're having to order. Is that impacted you much, or do you have an example?
Yeah, so a lot of our parts have gone up. I don't know for sure. I know like the one stat that I have is our biggest vendor in, it wasn't this last quarter, I think it was the last quarter in 2025. Across the board, everything went up 13%, which means some things went
Whoa.
60%, some things didn't go up at all. But like across the board of our price book, it went up 13%. So that's on hard on us as a company. And then it's hard on the customers because ultimately like that cost sharing goes to the customers as well. But we didn't see the shortages we saw during COVID. So that was good because we thought we might see
Hmm.
shortages of water supply or water heaters and things that require those materials. It's really just a cost thing. And so just keeping up with finding the best deals and trying to not pass any more than we have to onto the customers.
At this point, we focused on locking in with our vendors too. No price changes for 90 days, so 90-day lockdowns,
Hmm.
which they sometimes can't withhold, but it's usually on bigger pieces of equipment, like Jess said, water heaters, HVAC equipments. And I feel like we've actually gotten really good at it since COVID because it's just happening all the time. It seems like every year there's some
Yeah.
wacko thing that just like is like, oh gosh, we got to deal with this. Okay, let's go. Let's figure it out.
Yeah. It's true. And I think that's like for a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs is like there's always something, and you can kind of take the attitude of like, oh, like there's always something, or it's like, yeah, this is the world that I'm into. Is there's always going to be a problem to solve and always something to be, whether it's the tariffs or COVID, like something's going to keep happening.
Yeah, for
So it's all
sure.
about how you react to it. Yeah. All right, we're going to move into the next article, which is about Microsoft's voluntary retirement. So I'll do a quick recap. It's the first ever voluntary retirement, and they released the benefits. So it's a cash lump sum that will be paid out depending on your tenure between 2 months or over 3 years. You also get access to their medical benefits for 5 years, and then there's a couple of the stock benefits there. But basically, they're encouraging people to retire if they would like to. They have, as a reminder, Microsoft has already laid off like 15,000 people last year. This new voluntary retirement, is roughly 9,000 people would qualify for this. Not to say that all of those will take it, but it's all part of their strategy of continuing to reduce headcount in 2027. They did confirm that. So when I'm reading this article, I'm thinking about, obviously we're seeing so many tech layoffs, and I'm curious if we're seeing a lot more people interested in trades, not only the tech layoffs, but also like college is expensive, all that kind of stuff. So do you feel like you've noticed more people applying for jobs, inquiring? What's your take on that?
I don't see a lot of people trying to start over in the trades. It's a little bit hard to swallow a 3-year apprenticeship, once you have a career. We do see a lot more of our managers coming from other industries, and
Hmm.
people tell them like, hey, the trades is recession proof, it's COVID proof, it's pretty much anything proof because people always have plumbing, sewer, electrical problems. They see us as a stable industry, so that's been great. I do hope, though, that some of this tech reduction will maybe start to change the conversation around the trades industry, though, because I think people are more open than they used to be, but there's still this sense of going into the trades is lesser than going to college. And I would put a 3-year apprenticeship up against any 4-year college degree. Get out of your apprenticeship with a lifelong career. You are in super high demand. You can walk into any shop and get hired, making anywhere from a pretty good living wage to a really good living wage.
I wanted to
Um,
ask about that. Is it like I was reading about what's the range that people would normally make when they're like $100,000, or is it? Do you have like an
Yeah, I
estimate?
mean, it depends on, what part of the trade you're in and what you're
Sure.
doing. But our guys make anywhere from 80,000 to 200,000 a year. So we hope that they're all in kind of that 100,000, 150 range. And then you have, some outliers on one side or the other, especially just depending on what you're doing. But it's a really good living. And I mean, I took the college path, so I mean, I'm not knocking college, but I certainly didn't come out of my 4-year degree with a lifelong career. I bounced around quite a bit. So I think this concept of the trades like being what you do if you can't go to college is like completely backwards. It's like this is what you do if you want to like hit the ground running with a lifelong career. So
I feel like that kind of ties into your first topic too. Like we had the shortage a few years back, and there was all the conversation of like everybody since the 90s, right? Everybody's like, you got to go to college, you got to go to college. Well, I was the guy that was like, I ain't going to college. I'm going to go to Maui for 15 years, right? Now it's kind of coming back around. Like some people go to college, some people don't, and it's a little more even keeled. I don't think parents are pushing it as much either.
Well, and I interviewed my college professor, and we were talking about how I think there's this misconception that college is a runway to a job, and that's not really what college was built for. It was to expand your knowledge, learn how to look at the world, whatever. It wasn't like you go to college, you get a job, and that's what the trades is. And so I think people are starting to realize that, like, the college to job is not really a guaranteed path, and some people might want to do it. I also think we're seeing with this rise of AI and tech, maybe I'm making this up, but I feel like people want to do stuff with their hands and like build something and see it. And I work in events, I can work on something and I see the event happen. I think there's a lot of people working in tech and AI that aren't getting that reward and want to like go touch the grass. So I hope that kind of translates to increase in some of the workers in the trades. Is there anything else you want to say about like how AI or tech has kind of impacted your world at all?
There are some things that have been great for the trade. So all of our guys work off iPads. They can give you a quote instantaneously. You don't have to wait for 4 days for them to get back to you. You can take payments, all these things that have been really good. I think as AI has grown, we have dabbled in it here and there. We've tried using it to help the guys write their notes after the sessions. We've used it to record some of the customer interactions to try to like assess, coach. We've used it to try to route technicians. And at the end of the day, at least for us, we found that it's more of a crutch than a help. We're using these things, but all of these errors and other things are happening and we're not hands-on and controlling the situation. And so we haven't yet found very much that has stuck for us. We have implemented AI call center for after hours and when our CSRs are on the phone. So if you call Harts and everybody's busy, you'll get an AI assistant that says, hi, I'm the AI assistant. Everybody's busy. Or if you call at 2 a.m, that's what you get. But I personally would not trade my CSRs for AI for anything. We just use it as an overflow because it's really hard to find good overflow help, at 2 a.m. and the cost is a lot. But
sure.
I think people are considering it in terms of, replacing call centers and stuff. For us, to me, like my CSRs are the most valuable players on the front line of our business. And so I don't see that happening anytime soon, but definitely people are trying to utilize it in different ways. I think eventually it'll do some really great things. The last couple of years, I think it's been maybe more of a distraction than anything else, but...
Well, we've definitely had our this is going to be cool moments, and we try it out, and we're like, yeah, that's a waste of time. We need to stop that now.
Yeah.
I do think the one place that's been the best, though, is like the after hours call center. We used to hire these after hours call centers because we don't want to make our employees work 24/7. And, we would give them a script and try and teach them who we were, but we don't even know what they look like. I don't know their names, nothing. And our customer service was not good after hours, right? And this thing we've been able to kind of train to answer like a Harts employee.
I'm so glad you're not going full AI for customer service. I feel like that's one of those things that's like universally felt like people want to talk to a person, and yet we keep going away from it. And I get it. It's expensive, but like, I like that you're saying that, it's really only when you have to use it, and it's helpful.
It's a backup.
Okay. We're going to move on to our last little section here, which is about the World Cup. So there's been some articles coming out that bookings for hotels are lower than expected, and about 80% of hotel operators in the World Cup host city, so not just Seattle, they're all saying it's lower than expected. So this isn't just a Seattle specific feeling, but the article did interview some of the Seattle hotels about this issue. Part of it, they said that FIFA blocked a bunch of rooms in the beginning, creating this false sense of demand. And then at the end, they ended up just releasing like 70% of their room block. And then, of course, the war, the high gas prices, the perception of the U.S. and how accepting we are to people outside, all of that's playing into what we're seeing as lower hotel rooms, which is a bummer because that tax helps Seattle and doing all the fun things we want to do in Seattle. The only exception they mentioned was Australia. Australians are still traveling, they said. So that's the article. It's a little bit of a stretch here. I was trying to find something. Oddly, there was nothing about HVAC in the news articles. And I tell you what, I interviewed somebody who was doing human composting. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to find a business article about human composting. And that week they were doing an article. There was this big, long article about the business of cemeteries. And I was like, what are the chances? Anyway, for your episode, I'm sorry, I couldn't find an HVAC episode, but I'm using this to talk about Seattle and Tacoma specifically. So we are here in Seattle dealing with some rising utility costs. And I think there was a blog that you wrote or something that flagged a 6.5% power rate hike and 6.3 water rate increase hitting in 2025. So how are those increases impacting like the calls that you're getting in Seattle specifically or this area?
Sure. It's easier to talk about the water one because I'm a plumber, obviously, right? But sewers are leaking all over the place. Our treatment plants are overutilized. We've got water mains leaking all over the place. And a lot of customers are proactive, but let's be real, not all of them have the cash flow to take care of those issues. So they band-aid it or let it leak until they can, right? And so that affects the overall usage. We actually pay more for sewer than we do for water because we have to treat it. It's easier to pressurize a water line and get it to your home in a city setting than it is to take the sewage away and clean it and make it non-hazardous to be able to get rid of it or recycle it for that matter. And so that has increased, and that's always somewhat been of an issue, but it's gotten worse over the years with the decline in actually wanting to take care of the situations. Now, I know this year we're all kind of feeling the tax increases, right? And there's a bunch of them, so like we won't get into that, but that there's a reason that's happening. It's because the cities have to take control to be able to fix these things, and they don't have the money to do it either. So they got to get it from somewhere, which unfortunately all of us are going to end up contributing towards that, right? And then the electric push, natural gas, with the push of natural gas to minimize it and the increase of electricity, electric cars, things of that nature, that's the offset. Natural gas has made our electricity usage lower in the past. And as we've transitioned towards electric cars, trying to push away from fossil fuels, things like that, it's put a bigger strain on the system. Well, they've got to maintain their plants. They've got to maintain where that power is coming from. Things break when they get overloaded, no different than our homes. And so like they're trying to be preventative about it and get it to be a place where they can handle the offload. We've been putting in a lot of more smart panels, things like that like you can shut down things from your phone when you're on vacation in Rome, for example, or things like that. Like I can measure, like if I have a loss of power to, I don't know, coffee, something, an HVAC unit that's sucking more juice than normal, I can actually see that on my smart app on my phone. Now, not everybody's going for those because they're not cheap either, but that's kind of how I see the future coming, is like, let's get smarter with our internal systems in our homes so that we can actually have education as to why we're paying more. A lot of us, like, oh, I want a new hot tub. Throw the new hot tub in. Why is my bill $300 more a month? I wonder,
Right. Yeah. We don't think about that a lot. Is there anything else you guys want to say before I do my closing question? Anything else I didn't ask you that you wish you wanted to talk about?
Well, if you need a good service partner, we're the guys for you, man.
Yeah.
Call 1-800.
But yeah. I'm excited that we were here. I love talking about the trades, and I hope some people see this and think about the trades as a avenue for themselves or their kids, or just a different point of view of the people that come into their homes. So
totally.
I think outside of here, I hear a lot of people in life, friends, family, oh, I wish I would have done that with my life when they get into their older years. I don't hear that at Harts. I don't hear that about the trades. I don't feel that way. I'm very happy that I personally went into here. And I encourage people to push forward. We got a lot of old homes. We got a lot of things that need people to take care of them, and it's the future.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think you see a lot of people that have been plumbers for a long time, been electricians for a long time. So that makes sense, and that's a good sign. All right. My closing question for both of you is, what's something you're stopping doing? You're not doing it anymore, and that's a good thing.
You want to go first, Jess?
No, I want you to go first.
I have really been working on stopping allowing excuses, right? As a leader in a company or anything that, for that matter, could be the military, there's so many excuses out there as to why things can or can't happen. And I think reality is what you make it. Internal dialogue creates external life. So go be a powerful human and do what you think the right thing is to get to where you want to go. So I'm going to stop.
No, I like it. You're motivating. You're motivating me. Jess, what about you?
He is very motivational. Mine maybe a little less motivational. Recently, I have been just thinking about I guess kind of the same with the excuses, but stop letting things get in the way of the things that I want to do daily, right? So life is pretty short. Had a couple of people pass away recently, and it's like you're always on the grind, especially when you run a small business. There's always something, right? But, stop at 4, go take that yoga class. That's my thing on Mondays now. But, whatever it is, got my kid into a couple of sports and taking the time to take her there and, not letting, it's easy to be like, oh, I'm busy, I'm tired, whatever. You got to stop letting those excuses stop your life. And this is the perfect time because it's summer. So
that's right.
Long days, time to get out and get stuff done. I think it's really easy to blame work sometimes, but it's not really work stopping you. It's you.
So true. You guys need to go on tour and do some motivational talks because I'm ready to go. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys both, Rich and Jess, sitting down with me over at Harts Plumbing, Electricians, and HVAC Technicians. Give them a call if you need anything. This was not sponsored. I really just wanted to talk to them about the trade. So thank you guys again for taking the time.
Thank you, Rachel.
This has been The Weekly, with production assistance from Nick Patry. If you liked what you heard, rate us and write a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. We love listener feedback, so if you have any story suggestions, comments, or complaints, email us at info@theweeklyseattle.com. Make sure to check back next Sunday for the latest local business news. We'll see you next time.